The ship was small, barely large enough for a single occupant. It streaked through Earth's atmosphere, a burning comet of advanced technology designed for one purpose: exile. Inside, Lyra huddled against the curved wall, her violet eyes reflecting. The emergency lights that flashed warnings she had long since stopped reading. Banishment, the ultimate punishment on her world for questioning the Council's decisions. Not death, her people considered themselves too civilized for that, but permanent separation from the collective. Alone on a primitive planet, left to survive or perish without assistance. The landing was rough. The ship's systems, deliberately compromised before launch, failed in cascading sequence. When the pod finally crashed in a remote forest, Lyra was bruised and disoriented but alive. The door hissed open, revealing an alien landscape of towering green vegetation and unfamiliar scents. Breathable atmosphere, she murmured, consulting the small device on her wrist, the one technology they had allowed her to keep. Gravity, slightly less than home. Survivable conditions. Survival, however, was different from living. As the days passed, Lyra struggled. Her people had evolved past physical labor centuries ago, relying on technology for everything. Now she fumbled to build shelter, to find food that wouldn't poison her system. Her skin, naturally blue-tinted and sensitive to ultraviolet light, burned under Earth's harsh sun. On the 7th day it rained. Lyra huddled beneath her makeshift shelter, branches and leaves arranged in a pattern that leaked everywhere, and wept silently. The exile was working exactly as designed. She was alone, isolated, suffering. The perfect punishment for a society that valued connection above all else. The sound of footsteps made her freeze. Tom had been hiking the same forest trails for years. At 32, he'd seen enough of humanity to prefer the solitude of nature. His cabin, built with his own hands after leaving his job in the city, stood a few miles away, the only home he needed. When he noticed the broken trees and disturbed earth, he approached cautiously. A small aircraft crash, perhaps? But as he drew closer, he realized this was something else entirely. The metallic object half buried in the ground wasn't any plane design he recognized. Then he saw her, a huddled figure beneath a poorly constructed lean-to. Blue-tinged skin, large, violet eyes. Definitely not human. Tom's first instinct was to run. His second was to call someone, the authorities, the military, someone who handled situations like finding aliens in the woods. But as he watched her, shivering and clearly miserable in the rain, a third instinct won out. "Hey there," he called softly, approaching with open hands. "You look like you could use some help." Lyra stared at the human in shock. Her translator implant processed his words easily enough. She had been programmed with Earth languages before her exile, but his behavior made no sense. On her world, different meant dangerous. Unknown meant enemy. Yet here was this creature, approaching her with what appeared to be concern. "I won't hurt you," Tom continued, removing his rain jacket and holding it out. "You must be freezing. Here." Confusion and desperation warred within her. Finally, desperation won. Lyra accepted the jacket with trembling hands. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice melodic despite the translator. Tom nodded, making a quick decision. "My cabin's not far. Warm fire, dry clothes, food. You're welcome to come along. Or I can bring supplies back here if you prefer." Lyra studied him, this strange creature showing kindness to an alien being. Everything she had been taught about primitive species suggested she should be facing fear, aggression, or worse. Instead, she was being offered shelter. "I will come," she decided. The cabin was simple but solid, exactly what Tom needed and nothing more. A living area with a wood stove, a small kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom. He showed Lyra how to use the facilities, gave her dry clothes that hung loosely on her slender frame, and made soup while she warmed herself by the fire. "So," he said eventually, setting a bowl before her, "want to tell me how you ended up in my woods?" Hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, Lyra explained. the rigid society she came from, her crime, suggesting that their people should reconsider their policy of non-interference when a neighboring species faced extinction, the council's decision to make an example of her. They believe I'll die here, she concluded, alone and forgotten. Tom absorbed this, nodding slowly. Well, you're not alone anymore. And as for dying, he shrugged. I've got plenty of food, a spare room, and no particular attachment to whatever rules your council made up. Days turned to weeks. Tom taught Lyra how to garden, to fish, to chop wood. She learned quickly, her nimble fingers soon matching his skill despite never having performed physical tasks before. In return, she shared knowledge of the stars, of science far beyond Earth's understanding, drawing diagrams and equations that Tom studied with fascination. Your people, he asked one evening as they sat watching the sunset, do they ever reconsider these exiles? Ever come looking? Lyra shook her head. Never. To be exiled is to be erased. They've already chosen a replacement. For my position, my name has been removed from records. Tom considered this. Their loss, he said finally, and it was true. The council, in their wisdom, had intended Earth to be Lyra's punishment. Instead, they had given her something her highly advanced, rigidly structured society had never offered: freedom. Freedom to think differently, to question, to explore. Freedom to form connections based on choice rather than function. Most importantly, they had shown her that advancement and compassion weren't necessarily linked. Her technologically superior culture had cast her out for showing empathy. This primitive human had welcomed her despite her differences. One night, as stars filled the sky above the cabin, Lyra realized she no longer thought of her exile as punishment. The council had meant to break her spirit by sending her to Earth. Instead, they had inadvertently sent her home. And in finding Lyra, Tom discovered that sometimes the most human quality wasn't found in humans at all, but in the capacity for kindness that transcended species and worlds.